to my pre-trip inspection. I'm going to start down my passenger side. I'm looking for any leans, leaks, or visible damage. I'm looking underneath the truck for any visible leaks. I'm looking down my driver's side for any leans, leaks, or visible damage. Go up to my marker lights. I want to make sure they are properly mounted secure, not cracked, damaged, loose. They are clean, the proper color of amber. Go down to my headlights and my turn signals. I want to make sure that they are properly mounted secure, not cracked, damaged, loose. They are clean, the proper color of amber. They handle my left, my right turn signals, my four-way flashers, and my high and low beams. At this point, I'm going to open up the truck. Go to my passenger side engine compartment. I'm going to look at all my visible lines and all my visible hoses. I want to make sure they're all properly mounted secure, not cracked, damaged, loose. They are not leaking. I'm going to go to my coolant reservoir. I want to make sure it's properly mounted secure, not cracked, damaged, loose. It's not leaking, and it's filled to the proper level. I'm going to go down to my water pump, which is properly mounted secure, not cracked, damaged, loose. It's not leaking. My water pump is belt driven. I want to make sure that my belt is properly mounted secure, not cracked, damaged, loose. It's not cut, cracked, or frayed, and no more than 3/4 of an inch of play on it. I'm going to go to my driver's side compartment. Again, I'm going to start with all my visible lines and all my visible hoses. I want to make sure that they are all properly mounted secure, not cracked, damaged, loose. They are not leaking. I'm going to go to my windshield washer fluid reservoir, make sure it's properly mounted secure, not cracked, damaged, loose. It's not leaking. It's filled to the proper level. I'm going to go to my air compressor. You might want to get a little closer for this one. My air compressor is properly mounted secure, not cracked, damaged, loose. It's not leaking. It is gear driven. I'm going to go to my reservoir, my power steering reservoir. I want to make sure it's properly mounted secure, not cracked, damaged, loose. It's not leaking. I'm going to pull the dipstick out, wipe it off, reinsert it, pull it back out, get a reading, and act accordingly to it. My power steering reservoir hose goes down to my power steering pump, which is back here. You can't see it. I want to make sure it's properly mounted secure, not cracked, damaged, loose. It's not leaking. My power steering pump is belt driven. I want to make sure that it is properly mounted secure, not cracked, damaged, loose. It's not cracked or frayed, and no more than 3/4 of an inch of play on it. I've got my engine oil dipstick. I want to make sure it's both of these are properly mounted secure, not cracked, damaged, loose, and not leaking. I'm going to pull the dipstick out. I'm going to reinsert it. I'm going to pull it back out, get a reading, act accordingly to it. I got my alternator. Make sure it's properly mounted secure, not cracked, damaged, loose. I got my alternator wires. Make sure that they're properly mounted secure, not cracked, damaged, loose. My alternator is belt driven. I want to make sure it's properly mounted secure, not cracked, damaged, loose. It's not cut, cracked, or frayed, no more than 3/4 of an inch of play on it. I've got my steering gearbox. I want to make sure it's properly mounted secure, not cracked, damaged, loose. It's not leaking, and all my nuts and bolts are in place and tight. I'm going to go down my steering linkage, my pitman arm, my drag link, and my tie rod. All three properly mounted secure, not cracked, damaged, loose. No excessive wear or play on my bushings, and all my castle nuts and cotter pins are in place. Then I'm going to go to my suspension, my leaf spring hangers, my leaf springs, and my U-bolts. Make sure all of them are properly mounted secure, not cracked, damaged, loose, not bent, dent, broken, shifted, or missing, and that all of my nuts and bolts are in place and tight, and no excessive wear on any of my bushings. I've got my shock and my shock mounts. Make sure it's properly mounted secure, not cracked, damaged, loose. It is not leaking, and no excessive wear on my bushings. I've got my ABS line, my brake line, my brake chamber, my slack adjuster, and my push rod. All of it properly mounted secure, not cracked, damaged, loose. It's not leaking. My slack adjuster has a clamp that is, my brake chamber has a clamp that's securely fastened around it. My slack adjuster is at a 90-degree angle, and there's no more than 1 inch of play when my brakes are released. And all of my cotter pins are in place. I've got my inner brake drum lining. Make sure it's properly bound and secure, not cracked, damaged, loose. It's free of oil and grease, and there's a minimum of 1/4 inch of brake pad left on the brake pad. I've got my inner and outer rim. Make sure it's properly mounted, secure, not cracked, damaged, loose. It's free of unauthorized welds. My lug nuts, properly mounted, secure, not cracked, damaged, loose. They're all tight. My hub seal, make sure it's properly mounted, secure, not cracked, damaged, loose. It's not leaking. Then I'm going to go to my tire. My inflation, condition, and depth. I'm going to go to my inflation. I'm going to put a gauge on it. Get a reading at accordingly. Make sure the valve stem itself is not properly mounted, secure, not cracked, damaged, loose. It's not leaking. There's no abrasion and bumps and cuts on the tire. There's even tread wear on the tire. And there's at least 4 30 seconds of tread depth on the tire itself.